Hey folks, Dr. Mike Israetel here for Renaissance Periodization, Strength Training Myths video number 3. You shouldn't deadlift any more than one time per week. Let's take a look. We're going to take a look at the claim, the reality of deadlifts and fatigue, some situations in which maybe more deadlifting can be better, and then asking what the best approach is after that. So, the claim, very common, is if you deadlift more than once a week, hard and heavy, you're going to get crushed. The cumulative fatigue is just going to lead to super poor performances, if not worse. Super common in powerlifting circles. There's very little disagreement from this with most powerlifters, but is it really true? So here's the deal. There is a huge grain of truth to this. Deadlifts, more than bench presses and squats in most cases, seem to be uniquely fatiguing, or uniquely higher fatigue than the equivalent number of sets and reps and percentages for squats or bench. Especially once you're pulling over about 500 pounds, unless you're a super long-armed freak and it's just not a big range of motion for you, you're going to take a huge hit from any deadlift workout. And a lot of you folks watching this who have deadlifted heavy before know exactly from experience what I'm talking about. There's a fatigue deadlifts give you that's really just unmatched with the same volume of any other lift. I mean, it just totally erases you. And if you try to deadlift heavy too soon in the week or at all in the week later, what ends up happening is your performance is just awful and there's like a weakness in your lower back area that's difficult to describe. Sometimes it's even like a nervous system weakness where as soon as you get your hands around the deadlift bar and you're not recovered from last session of heavy deadlifts, you just don't even feel strong. It's really, really crazy. So for most people, this means that stuffing in more than one deadlift session per week is just prohibitive. And even if it's tough but doable, a lot of times it's just not really doable. It just doesn't work. It makes you weaker over time rather than stronger. Now, you may ask, what about those exercise science studies showing that deadlifts aren't especially fatiguing? They have very poor ecological validity. They're conducted usually on untrained undergraduates and physical fitness majors. And they're not conducted over a long period of time. They're usually just one exposure and then measuring fatigue with some kind of instrument that doesn't directly measure actual week-to-week deadlift performance, which is the ultimate measurement of does this work or does it not. And it's really tough to just offer up this one study as a refutation of something almost every good powerlifter has experienced and knows to be true, right? It's a real tough sell to tell people, hey, deadlifts aren't actually uniquely fatiguing. You're like, well, everyone I know, all the best lifters, and myself included, not one of the best lifters, just someone I know, has just gotten crushed by deadlifts. There's got to be something there. And that I'm of a firm belief there absolutely is. And the validity of the exercise science studies is just missing it. So we don't want to just say, okay, it's bullshit because this one study found is true. We have way better evidence than one study. It's almost every power lifter ever says deadlifts are excessively fatiguing. They are, on average. That doesn't mean that some folks can't benefit from more than once a week deadlifts, okay? It does need to be treated with respect. So you don't want to rush into any high frequency deadlift programs. You'll also notice there's tons of squat everyday programs or high frequency squatting. There's tons of high frequency benching. I have yet to see a high frequency deadlift program. That's probably not by accident. They just really just don't work, right? However, there are some groups of people that can benefit from more frequent deadlifting. First of all, are smaller lifters, especially female lifters, who do not accumulate as much fatigue, and they recover faster from fatigue that they do accumulate. They, in many cases, can absolutely do 2 hard deadlift sessions per week, and that makes them better. It's not just that they can. That 2 hard deadlift sessions per week makes them better than just 1 hard deadlift session. So for those folks, they recover faster. They should be doing it. In addition to that, almost all lifters, perhaps all, can get better at deadlifting by at least practicing the lift more often. That means maybe they just do 1 heavy session per week that's very hard, but maybe a session of a few sets of 3 to 6 reps with an RPE of like 5, so submaximal, later in the week can help improve technique a lot and make your deadlift better. Because think about it this way. Often squat multiple times a week, your technique stays nice and crisp and actually improves over time. You bench multiple times a week, your technique can get better and then stay crisp. People who just deadlift physically hard or heavy or light with technique, they usually just deadlift once a week. If you want to get good motor pattern, movement pattern-wise at something, you really just don't train it once a week. I mean, that's almost unheard of in the movement sciences. you're better off training at least twice a week. And if you actually do deadlifting once hard and once much easier, it absolutely improves your performance, because next time you go in and deadlift hard, especially weeks and months later, your technique on the hard deadlifts is way better because you had practice on the easy ones and they didn't add any fatigue. That can be a very powerful weapon. Unfortunately, many people don't do this because a lot of lifters have this mentality of either I'm in the gym doing lifts hard or I'm not, right? I squat twice a week, both are heavy. There's such thing as light squats. What the fuck am I doing them for? Well, it turns out technique's a real thing. Olympic weightlifters are used to this. They have some days when they go heavy, some days when they go much lighter, and it's purposefully to improve their technique because they know they need more technique training than they can survive heavy training. It's a fact, and the deadlift absolutely falls into that category. So a sample week that we can construct for a small female deadlifter, for example, is on Monday, she could deadlift 4 total working sets, 3 to 4 reps per set, with an RP of 7 to 10. Good old meat potatoes, working weights, working relative efforts. On Wednesday, she might deadlift 4 sets again, but this time 5 to 6 reps, actually less load, more volume, similar adaptations, just a bit of daily undulating periodization there, and then an RP of 7 to 10. So again, a hard session, doesn't require as much pulling force, but absolutely requires a lot of fatigue to be spent. Friday, look, if we did another heavy deadlift session Friday, by next Monday, she'd be toast and be useless. However, Friday, what she could do is just 3 sets, not a ton of work, 3 reps per set, again, even less work than before, and an RP of 5 on each one of those sets. It's literally just working through the technique. Weight is just heavy enough to feel like a deadlift, that the center of gravity is kind of where it should be, versus if you were doing a completely unloaded bar or something, it would just be like wacky technique. You could lift it any way and you wouldn't even know which way gravity points because there's not enough gravity pulling the weight down. RP 5, 3 sets of 3 reps, drops the fatigue from the other deadlifts, if just not touching it at all and letting it fall on its own, and it enhances technique. So when she goes back to training next Monday to do her heaviest deadlifts again, not only is she going to have low fatigue because ever since Wednesday she didn't train hard on the deadlift, Friday was an easy session, but also that Friday gave her a little bit of a technical boost, some refinement, so that her setup in the actual deadlift on Monday when it's heavy is going to be a little bit better. It's going to lead to better results. If you're a large male, right, then maybe 2 hard deadlift sessions like that are untenable. Like Monday, you do a hard deadlift session. Wednesday, you're not doing shit that requires hard deadlifting because you're way too fucked up. In that case, you can try a lower frequency approach that is still a little bit of that element of technique. Monday, you do 4 sets of 3 to 6 reps, RP of 7 to 10, hard training. Thursday, you might do 3 sets of 3 with an RP of 5. Technique only training. It doesn't add to fatigue from the deadlift. It absolutely makes, because of that higher frequency, more time for practice, more frequent practice. It makes you better at the physical movement of deadlifting. And then when you go to next Monday, you'll be more crisp, more sharp, not any more fatigued, and you'll lift better. And that second example is probably better in almost every way than just deadlifting heavy once a week and then doing nothing at all deadlift related the rest of the week. Similar stimulus, but on the strength side, on the neural force production side, but not as much technique refinement, and small deviations in technique can absolutely add up to notable numbers on the bar. So what's the best approach? If you're at a current deadlift frequency, start with your current deadlift frequency and maybe considering upping that frequency by 1 session per week for the deadlift, right? So I would say that wherever you are in deadlifting frequency, you should probably, that session you add should be a technique only session. Okay, I wouldn't add a working session, like super hard and heavy deadlifts once a week is what you're used to. I wouldn't go to super hard and heavy deadlifts twice a week. That may be too much. Just add a technique session, RP 5 triples or something like that. See how you feel. Your deadlift might start going up and it might start feeling better. Now, when you're prioritizing the deadlift in specific mesocycles designed to prioritize the deadlift, you may actually insert another hard session during that time. So you may actually do that Monday, Wednesday, Friday thing where it's Monday hard and heavy, Wednesday a little bit lighter, but still super hard, and then Friday, very easy recovery technique only work. You may try that. Make sure your rep ranges are a little bit different between the 2 sessions, Monday and Wednesday. Make sure the heaviest of the 2 comes first, or in other words, is after that long interval of recovery. So when you're training Monday, your heaviest, that means last Friday was your lightest and Wednesday was the last hard workout. That's a lot of time for recovery because that Monday is the most demanding session, the most important, the one in which you need to be the most recovered. Lastly, you want to reduce your squatting volume because deadlift priority cycles, a lot of times deadlifting uses very many of the similar muscles for squatting. So take your squatting volume and put it either to maintenance or minimum effective volume, lower because you want to make room in your recovery abilities for more deadlifting. And then you see how that pans out. You may get a third of the way through the cycle and be like, this is stupid. Then you just go back to doing one hard session and one light session. You might actually have great results, but at the end of the meso cycle, they're like, ooh, my deadlift has gone up a ton. And then next meso after the deload, you're like, wow, it went up even more than I thought, but that definitely beat me up and it's not sustainable. Then you can use it every now and again on an occasion that you actually want to increase your deadlift more than your other lifts. Folks, thanks for tuning in. See you next time.